All right, so welcome back to part two. We're gonna get into some of these internal components. Probably not all of them, because that would take very long, but I wanna show you quite a few of them. And I am gonna go a little bit faster this time. So I'm gonna start hiding some components. I wanna turn off the table. I wanna turn off all the cables. And I think at this point we'll start with just this main, actually let's start with something a little less complicated than this big PCB. Let's leave that. Actually, let's just go to the simplest one, which is going to be the lower housing. Just a few components in here. All right, so looking underneath here, it looks black. We want to see, we need to turn off the shadows to see this. So I had to change the keyboard shortcut. I set mine to Shift S. Unfortunately, Luxion got rid of the S keyboard shortcut to turn off shadows. I'm really bummed by that, but you'll have to change that. Okay, so let's get this blocked in. If we look at our reference here, we're gonna be, orange and kind of this nice silicone, really soft orange. Love this material. It's gonna be easy, just a translucent orange. And I might wanna color pick this orange. So I'm gonna set this off the side of the screen so we can get access to it. Let's get back into KeyShot. Let's start by color picking that orange. Very good. And we'll set this to translucent. Yep, looks bad. Well, the reason we're seeing this is because there's light coming onto this part from up above. Let's set our translucency to a very low number, like 10. And we need to turn on global illumination for this material to look accurate. And again, it's being blocked from all the light, so it's very hard to see. So here's what we can do with KeyShot 10, which is cool. I'm going to select this part, and I'm going to hit S, which is in solo. So that's going to hide every other part except for this one. And then when I hit S again, it should bring everything back. That's a nice little KeyShot 10 feature. So what we want to get is the soft edges, and I want to see the text down below. So I'm going to hit Control D and rotate this so I can see. I want to make sure this text is reading correctly and looking soft enough compared to our reference photo. It's not reading soft enough if you ask me, so I'm going to set the translucency instead of 10, I'll go 20. Let's go 50, really soft. And then I want to take the subsurface up to a higher, lighter color, and more like a lighter yellow. And then we need to include some roughness. So let's try 0.3, very high level of roughness. And we're losing a little bit of the lettering, but that's because our shadows are still off. So Shift S, I'm hitting to bring those back on. Not sure if that helped a whole lot. So this is looking too soft. Let's go ahead and take it down to 20. And our lighting is going to have a huge impact on this. I think this is pretty good for now. If we want to really pop out some of these darker areas, we could use like an occlusion. But again, that's getting a bit advanced. I'll worry about that later if we really care to. This is going to be facing down on the table, so it's not a huge deal. Maybe 0.3 is a little too rough. Let's do 0.2. 0.15. 0.1. Let's do 0.1. This way we have a little bit of Fresnel effect, so some of that light giving us some good definition. That looks a lot better. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to reset this. So how do we move it back into its old position? We're going to go to, well, actually, let's save the material. Let's do a name is going to be orange rough silicone. Save that. And what I want to do is go ahead and reset it. So go to position and hit reset. And it should go back to its position it was in when we imported it. This is why I like to not move any models. And then to get out of solo mode, I should be able to hit S, bring back those other parts. Bring back those shadows, Shift S. Looks like I could not bring back the shadows in solo mode. So that's a bug I'll have to report Luxion. Now, we have this nice plastic, which we've already made, but there's some internal components. We're not going to see these screws very much unless we do an exploded view. I'm going to set these to a black paint, basically, or plastic. So I'm going to make sure I unlink them, unlink material, double click on it to make sure you're editing this one, set it to black. We'll go to 5%. To make it a little bit more metallic-like, bring this up to a refractive index of 2. I know it's a bit of a cheat, but sorry. Roughness of 0.05 is fine. And then I'll go ahead and just save this as black painted metal. So that refractive index of 2 just makes it a little bit shinier and it looks like the black painted metal. This is the material block-in, so I'm not getting too detailed with my materials. Shift left click, shift right click to paste that on all these others. And you can see as this reses up, there's some of these really fine details that I chose to model in here. Worked pretty nicely. I know I was going to use textures or labels, bump textures for some of these, but they didn't work as well as I hoped, so I ended up modeling those in Fusion 360 using the DXF files I exported from Illustrator. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so we also have in here a couple more fasteners. These I don't think are painted black, so I want to take this and make it more like just a metal. So I'll go ahead and set this. I would set it to normal metal, but I'm going to borrow the metal that we made, that textured metal on the plug. So shift left click. Actually, got it. Those are already linked. Anything that inherits this that I don't want, we'll have to unlink, but it looks like I did a good job of making sure all the metal materials were linked up to start. So that's looking good. Now this part here should be the same plastic. So shift left click, shift right click. These are black plastics in here, I remember. Let's look at our reference. So I don't know if I have the component reference in here. Let me see. I know I had some more references in my label reference. There we go. This is what I wanted. Sorry about that. So we have this little guy that goes in here is, of course, looks like I don't have, oh yeah, it's this piece right here. Let's make sure we can see this properly. Okay, so it's this piece down here that I'm working toward. So it's just basically a, you know, just a dark green. It's pretty shiny. We've got a couple labels and bump textures on it. Got these metal parts. This is a white plastic, and then I've got the ribbon that plugs into it. Everything else is basically a rough black plastic. So if we pop back into KeyShot, let's go ahead and start by making this our PCB material. Now, I always like to make this translucent because it just gives such a nice look to it. So let's go ahead and make this kind of that dark army green, and not plastic, but translucent. Yes, not medium. Translucent is going to slow things down for sure, but I think it just is an unbeatable, nice soft look with the subsurface scattering. So let's set the translucency to like 50. Again, not very high, just to soften those edges. Want the subsurf always to be kind of a lighter color. I like to do kind of a yellowish color. This texture, actually, we can, so funny enough, this surface color can be, I think, something like this. And now we can take this texture down to just white. And that's a little bit cleaner. And now, a little bit simpler. So notice this is super soft looking and a little too bright. That's because it's yellow. I want to make this a little more green. Maybe not quite as bright. And then this should be much darker for that surface color. And then lastly, we need to probably walk the translucency down a little bit. So it's like, let's just try very subtle. And yeah, I know this is tedious and it's a little bit slow, but this is what it takes. This is where you got to put in the mileage. There's also the global illumination. If we turn that on, it's going to get quite a bit brighter. And go quite a bit darker. And let's also darken this, and might want to drop the saturation a touch. And then I'm going to go even darker on this. So as this sits and reses up, it'll actually get lighter and lighter. Hopefully not too bright, but it gets a little bit lighter as you let it sit. So if we look back at our reference, I think we're pretty close there, color-wise. Now, I do want to set this to a little bit higher refractive index, 1.6 maybe, a little bit shinier. Let's just go a hair lighter. Let's go to 25. Maybe just a touch lighter here too, 65 to 55 saturation. You can take a little bit of creative freedom when it comes to this too. Now, a lot of the PCBs I designed in here, or I modeled in here, are pretty similar. And getting this kind of the raw edge on the PCB can be a challenge. And there's some fun things we can do with that material. I'm trying to look at it right now off screen. There's like a bit of a gridded pattern and also some layered plies. So a fun way to do that, if I get in here, is to go into the material graph. And if I want to create a kind of a bit of a more raw edge, let's right click and do, we want to do a marble. No, I want to do marble. Yeah, let's just do marble. C to preview. We're going to take this and set this color to kind of this light yellowish greenish color for now, and then a bit of a darker more yellowy. Okay, and then what we want to do is take the noise and vein scale down to 0. Actually, we need one of these to be darker so we can see it. Let's take our texture and scale this way, way, way down. Center it on the part. Let's move texture, and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. It's too hard to see. Let's fix this. Sorry. Move the texture. Where is our marble? All right. Sometimes you push the settings too far and then you can't see it. Back to textures. Let's use our marble. C to preview. We'll make it white and black. I jumped the gun on that one. We're gonna take the noise scale down and the noise down, the thickness up. Remove the texture, center it on part, rotate it. Hopefully we should see something. There we go. Now what I want to do, scale it down so we see those lines. So marble, remember, parallel lines when we talked about procedural textures. Set this to 1, make it teeny tiny, and then I'm going to rotate it again. 90 degrees. Let's see, we want to go this way, and then we're going to rotate it another 90 degrees so we get plies, almost like plywood. So different layers. I want to take the vein thickness up a little bit so we have some thicker plies, and we're going to even take it down to say 0.5. Go thicker. 0.75 maybe. And what I want to do is actually set, have this only show up on the sides, not on the top and bottom. And I want it to be a different material, believe it or not. So we're going to take this and we're going to set the colors. Actually, let's just duplicate our translucent. We're going to set the texture to be the marble. Preview it. We're going to make the marbles, sorry, translucent, we're just gonna desaturate these. So take the saturation to 0, and this one to 0. So now our color should come just from our marble texture. And let's take this and set it to kind of a light yellow. Let's take the vein color and do just like a similar. We need there to be enough contrast to see. So there we go. The translucent is a little bit slow. What I might end up doing is just setting this to, believe it or not, just diffuse for now. Oh, sorry, diffuse. There we go. Maybe we'll just do plastic. And then we want them to be pretty close to the other materials that we have on there. So what I could do, translucent, just grab this material, put it down here in the left. Grab this color, sorry, put it down here in the left. Now in our marble, we can start with those two. And then maybe I just lighten it a little bit and drop the saturation. And then grab the other color and same thing. Oops, lighten it, drop saturation. So now when we preview the plastic, we have this type of thing going on. Just set our roughness pretty high, like 0.2 or 0.3, because this should be pretty rough. And then I want to make it invisible on the top and bottom. And we'll do this by masking color composite with a color gradient. And then all we need to do is scale this way down like 2. And maybe let's go to 1. And I want to rotate this 90 degrees, so it's centered on part. Rotate it 90 degrees. So it's black on top and white on bottom, which is what we want. Let's turn off blend. And now what I want to do, where it's white, is I want to move and get another black dot. Double click, black. So now we have black on the bottom. Let me bring this white to the very edge. So this is going to mask out the top and bottom. Where it's white, we're going to see the other material. So all we're going to do with this is plug this into the opacity of this plastic. And then this plastic is going to become a label on our base material. So now we have the subsurf, kind of the translucent material, but on the sides we have this kind of plasticky one here. If you really wanted that to be translucent, we could do that as well. We could probably set this plastic to be translucent, see what happens with that. It'll look a little bit more realistic, match the other ones a little bit. The only thing is we're going to need to take that texture. Looks like it's going in just fine. We just may need to take that subsurface up a little bit. Maybe a little lighter and a little more yellow. Make sure that global illumination's on there. And there we got a pretty nice kind of a PCB, base PCB material. I also like to do a little grid texture. So I like to go and grab a texture such as a mesh. Preview this. Let's make it square instead of circle. Scale sky way down. And so this is just purely aesthetic and it's kind of up to you. I like, referencing the real thing gives me this idea of a texture. So we're going to bring them closer together, the pattern spacing, bring these squares closer together, and then really use the fall off to make them kind of more softer on the edges and kind of pillowy. And bring the pattern spacing down a bit. There we go, and then we can bring the size up a bit. And then from here, we're going to apply this as a bump texture, but notice the edges. I don't want this mapped on the sides. Right now it's set to box. We're going to set this to planar. Now the edges get some other kind of crazy little bump pattern, which is fine by me. It's going to be add some extra flair. So we're going to plug this into our bump on the translucent, and hopefully we see it. So it doesn't appear to be showing. Let's make sure we got that. It's on our label, that's why. Put it on our base material. Bump. There we go. Now it's way too high, and we want it to be negative value for the bump. So let's do a negative 0.1. And see how it breaks up that surface? It actually gives it some cool texture. That's what's going to make this look a lot more realistic. And we can play with that fall off. Maybe it's a little too high. Let's do a 0.5 fall off. That looks quite a bit better, if you ask me. And it's still a little heavy, so let's do 0.05 for that bump. So from a distance, that's going to have a little bit of a texture to it, but just not too much, and it just depends on our lighting. And lastly, we need some roughness on this. So we're going to add a little bit of roughness, and I have fun using this same mesh for roughness. I think that's cool, instead of just a uniform roughness. So let's take our, maybe even 0.05 is a, let's do 0.02. There we go. And we're going to use a little roughness. So plug this into our roughness, but we're going to use a color to number again on the roughness, as always. And we're going to even this roughness out a bit. So right now it's a little too drastic. So I want to take the roughness where it's black is glossy. Let's make it a little less black. And where it's white, it's rough. It's too rough. Let's darken that a bit. So as we bring this closer to all matching in the same color, we're going to have more of a uniform roughness. There we go. That's a little bit, maybe a little too rough. Maybe I want a little more contrast. Sorry, there's a siren in the background. So the PCB should be mostly glossy, but let's do 0.01 and let's do 0.2. How does that work? Still a bit rough. Let's do 0.1. There we go. So just a bit of roughness to break that up. I know from a distance these details are like insanely minute, like insanely so. But again, this is some of the stuff that, you know, people ask me how to do. So I want to show you the whole behind the scenes. And when we get into animating, it's cool to have all this detail. Now this edge is too bright for me. So what I want to do is on this translucent, let's make sure that we have, you just do a color adjust. And what I can do is take the colorize, overlay that, and then it's way too dark. Let's go ahead and bring this closer to white and less saturated. There we go. I think that's quite a bit better. And let's desaturate it a bit. Let's do 0.8. There we go. It's looking quite a bit better. Maybe it's a little bit bright too. Let's do 0.8. A lot better. So from here, we're looking pretty good. And this is what's fun. I can save this as a PCB material. As long as I have a PCB within, you know, the neighborhood of the same thickness of this, this will work. And it's easy to adjust. So I'll call this PCB green base material 1. Or maybe I'll call it like grid pattern or something. And then we'll go ahead and save this so we can use it on some other stuff. And then the last part, as I'm sure you're aware, is to apply our bump textures and our labels. Talked about how to do that before, but why not just knock that out here on this material? And then we might take a little break here. Let's see. So I need to go in and grab where the materials. So the bump, I'm going to grab that bump, which is going to have a little, here's a little barcode on it. If I recall, it's got this, not barcode, QR code. And then it also has this trace pattern, this bump trace pattern with some holes. So I'm going to grab the bump first and put that right into the material graph, C to preview it. We need to set it to planar, center it on part, move texture, rotate it into place, and looks like it's actually pretty well placed. Now let's set its DPI to 1200 like we did on the other ones. And this may just need a little moving and finessing. Maybe I made it a little bit too big. Let's dial that 1200 back. Just take our scene units, scale this down. I want to make sure that everything fits on that PCB. Even the angle I may have been ever so slightly off. You know, you do your best to get it right, but sometimes it's off. I think that's good. So I'll accept that. This is our bump texture, believe it or not, and it's going to go on our base material, but we need to add a bump add to accept it because we already have that mesh bump. Plug this into bump 2, and now we get these cool details. And if we look at our reference photo, these need to go in, not out. So bump height, let's do a negative 0.5. That's pretty good. Negative point, maybe 2.5. And then if we look on our reference, they're a lot darker. So I can go ahead and use that for the color. So for our texture, we're gonna go ahead and pop this in for our texture. But we need to kind of invert it, I believe. Let's try a color invert. Yeah, pretty cool. Now color invert's good, but these are too dark. I want them not so dark. So we can't change that as much. We have to use another node. So if we're gonna use a node here, let's just use one node instead of multiple. We can do a color to number. This will do both a color invert by swapping these values and giving us control over how dark they are. So we'll take that black, and I think we need to take the input 2 down. Nope, I was wrong. Take the input from up. Nope, it's also not gonna work. Let's take the output 2. Oh my gosh, I can't get this. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Let's actually go back and do the, let's just do a color adjust after this. My bad. Oh, I know why. Oh, okay. So here's why. Because it's got transparency in there and it's adjusting the color of the entire texture. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna add this as another. How do we want to do that? Darn it. Start with a color invert, and then, believe it or not, we have to do it with another label, which I'm not thrilled about, but let's just duplicate this. We'll plug this into here and plug this in as a label too. And then from here, we can just knock back its opacity. So let's grab a color to number. Plug this into our opacity and take the output from up. And that should allow that to come back in. So let's say 0.5 maybe. And just make sure that this bump is still correct, this bump value. Yep. So yeah, that was a lot of work for that. Sorry, that's a little weird, but I had to do that. Maybe darken it a bit. So this will go to 0.75. Cool. And then last but not least, we have our silk screen. So we're gonna grab that, and that's gonna be in my silk folder, and grab the right texture for that. I believe this is the right one. I'll drag it in. And of course, it's going to require another material, but this one's just going to be a plain old plastic. And pop that in for another label. Pop this into the diffuse. let's preview it and map it properly. So we're gonna go to planar, center on part, 1200 DPI, move texture, rotate it, holding shift. Might be backwards, let's see. So that should be the left of that. I think it's actually correct, but maybe just a little too big. So we can hold Alt, grab the corner, scale it down. So I'm trying to reference this here. This component should be surrounded by this silkscreen detail there, and then we can maybe translate this over a bit. It's looking good. Cool, that's that. Get out of that preview. We got our plastic label, and then depending on how glossy we want to make it, we can leave it glossy. I think it should be pretty rough though, probably like a 0.05-ish, and then we can use it for bump as well. But we don't want the bump being too high, so again, it's going to be pretty minute. 0.1, 0.05, 0.02. Let's do that. And there, ladies and gentlemen, we have a finished PCB. If we want this to be a little bit inkier, a little bit more shiny, we could always take that plastic and just, you know, kill the roughness. But I don't know, 0.02 or something, 0.01. I don't want it too shiny. But yeah, looking pretty good. So I'll save this as, looks like I spelled material wonky before, material. And this is going to be PCB, maybe IO or something. I don't know what to call it. I'll just call it PCB. One PCB. Lower PCB? Lower. No, there's two others. Small. PCB small. Material. Finished, so we know it has labels, I guess. I don't know. I'll go ahead and save this. All right, that was a silly deep dive on how to create a nice PCB, an accurate PCB. These other materials, we have some plastic, some black plastic we have to block in. So let's just do a hard, rough black plastic, or shiny. Let's start with shiny. I'll put it on this guy here. And then from here, we're gonna just do a couple basic edits to this material and make it a little more realistic. I'm gonna hit S to solo. Okay, that didn't quite work. Let's select the right part. This part, solo. So, and our camera, we need to focus it. Let's do center and fit. Selection. There we go. So let's grab this guy and make sure that we have some variable roughness and some texture. So very basic texture. Actually, just pop the material graph. Right click, texture, noise texture, bump, really small. 2.1. And a bump height of 0.15, magnitude of, let's try 2. And then roughness, we need some variable roughness. So materials, or sorry, textures, granite, colored number. Okay, plug this into our roughness, set this guy down to something like 15. We're looking pretty good. Color to number. We want this to be pretty rough. It's pretty much a matte material. Bring that output from up a little bit. Maybe scale this guy down just a bit. 10. It's looking pretty good, but still too much contrast. So I'll drop the output to a little bit. There we go. That's nice. Again, we just want some teeny little roughness variability there. And the bump's too big, so 0.05. I know it seems crazy. That's looking nice. And I like to do maybe a magnitude of 3, a little bit sharper. That's looking nice. And really, that's all we're going to do on this material. So this is going to be kind of hard. Gosh, maybe go a little bit higher with that size. 0.08. I'll call this 0.1, yeah. Because I want to be able to still see that texture from a bit of a distance, and I'll adjust it as needed. So I'm going to call this hard textured black var rough, and then save that, because of course we're going to put this on quite a few other parts. S to get out of solo mode. Awesome, awesome. And we're closing in on this part here. This is, I think, a white, technically. Let's see. Yeah, weird. That's a white plastic. This is where I'm going to take my own creative direction and use this same black on here. I'd rather this have more contrast. It just looks better. These guys need to be a gold, so I'm going to set it to metal. Measured, gold. There we go. Maybe a teeny bit of roughness, 0.02. And what else do we have in here? Some other, looks like we have some other pins on this. That would be silver or gold or copper, whatever we use for the conductivity. I'm just going to use the same gold on these. I think we have some parts in here that might need that too. Okay, those are already in. Yeah, those already got applied. What else? We're getting close. This is plastic. We already got that assigned. All right, guys, I think that's it. I think everything we see here is we've put a material on. Let's verify that by going to the in-scene materials, which we have quite a few. Filter by visibility. If everything here is a material that we made, then we're good. Looks like there's a couple we missed. So let's find out what this one is. Right click, select parts with material. Where is it? There we go. Ah, way down here. This little capacitor or whatever the heck this is. So this guy is just going to become a light tan plastic. Let's go a little more brown. Okay, what else do we have? Let's do 0.05. And then we have this guy, select parts with material. Where are you? There we are. So it's this little slider switch. So I'm going to shift left click to copy this black, shift right click to paste. Now, in-scene materials are everything that we have built. See how they're plastic, transparent, plastic, whatever, translucent, I mean. They're no diffuse. That's what we're looking for. Now we know we've put real physically accurate materials on here. And that's going to close out this session. We'll see you in the next video. We'll keep working on some of these internal components and hang in there. Long process.